So another question that I want to ask you, based on the conversation that we had, based on coming from a mom or coming from a family that owned multi-million-dollar operation and businesses, being self-made, being entrepreneurs, going through your personal struggles and feeling not complete or feeling you didn't satisfy what you wanted from yourself, and then going through your lows and coming back up as a CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, as a female operation in a field that there is barely any woman there. So like you being so much, like you seen up and you seen down and you came back up again. How do you define success?
Whew, that's another great one. If I'm answering that question for how I define it today, because it's been different throughout my life.
Correct.
But today I define success as living, like authentically showing up as who I am in the world, wherever I am. So if I am, leading my company and we're growing, of course we have metrics, we have goals that we want to achieve. We want to keep, being financially successful. But when I think of, how I define my personal success, it is showing up authentically, not trying to be someone that I'm not, and really creating an environment where other people can be invited to show up as their best selves. I just thought of an example. Recently, I had an employee where there was a situation that I made a mistake, like a big mistake. And their feelings were really hurt. This is an employee that, worked for my grandfather, has worked for my mom, like has been with us a very long time. And that person felt comfortable enough coming into my office, sharing with me that they were upset. And we were able to have a dialogue, and I was able to not try to cover my ass, be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, this is what I meant to do. I just was full on honest and just was like, you know what? I completely miss this here. I see why you're upset. I see. And he was able to come to me, right? We were able to dialogue around something uncomfortable.
I see.
That could have been a bigger issue. Mm-hmm. But we created a relationship, and I've shown up as a leader in a way that he could come in and be real honest, but that I could be honest back with him. Yeah. And I could say, I should have done better.
Yeah.
And so to me, I think that creating an environment where I show up as an authentic version of me, and that I create an environment where other people can show up as their authentic selves, and we can work together to just keep, moving forward in a way that's values aligned, and that, helps us all meet our personal and professional goals. Like, that is success to me.
You were really approachable for someone to come and being able to share what he shared. And I think as a human being that authentic and so real that someone can come and tell you and share with you like whatever, something dark, something angry, something uncomfortable, that for you to be that open, that person feels so comfortable to come and talk to you regarding that, really congratulations.
Well, thank you. And I had a moment too as the leader. I could have done some fast talking and tried to explain why the situation was what it was.
Correct.
But in that moment, I was genuinely disappointed in myself for making the mistake, right? And so I feel like that makes our relationship stronger, and that makes my leadership stronger. And I hope, it's my prayer, right? This is actually something that very recently happened, right? That's how I demonstrate the building of trust. Correct. And that we can't, it's not that nothing ever goes wrong. Correct. But it's how do we show up when it goes wrong.
Correct.
And how do we especially in workplaces, I think people are so afraid of making mistakes or, admitting when something goes wrong, and then it becomes a bigger issue than it needs to be, right? And if I'm not demonstrating that as a leader, then how are people supposed to know how to do that?
Yeah. How do you learn these leadership techniques?
I think a lot of it comes from the struggle that I went through in my teen years and my 20s. One of the things that, not to go back to my mom, but, she gave me access to therapy when I was 13. And I spent a lot of time gathering tools and feeling, seeing the value in self-reflection and self-growth.
I see. Is there any a specific tool that you can say, to build this character, this was so important to have?
I would say that the desire for knowledge and seeking.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's going to be different for everybody, right? For me, I seek out, books on how to, I read about codependency recently, even though I didn't necessarily consider myself a codependent person, but then I realized there's something for me to learn here. And then the person in that book referenced another researcher, and then I started to get curious and go kind of down that pathway. And what I've learned is the more that I can be curious and the more that I can practice being self-reflective, when I have feelings, when I feel upset, instead of judging that, just being curious, where is that coming from? What could that be attached to, instead of kind of lashing out or trying to stuff it? The more I do that for myself, the more I feel like I can be that space for somebody else.
Okay.
Because I practice that openness and non-judgmental, kind of place for my own emotional healing. But if I look back, I've spent more than half my life on this kind of quest for, knowing better and doing better.
So you were so eager to learn more, and you went and you searched. Was that easy to search? Was that easy to, let's say someone just like you once said, you know what, I want to change myself. I want to change how I feel. I want to change. I want to learn. How easy that is for someone to go and do, try to learn more, try to have more knowledge. How easy that is?
I think that in the today of it, it's pretty easy because we have the internet, right? I have a full computer,
yes,
a phone.
Yes.
And so, even if there's podcasts, there's books, there's interviews. And for me, I really enjoy hearing other people's experiences. So I learned a lot. I learn a lot from memoirs or from podcasts where people are sharing kind of their personal experience, and not so much here's a 10-point plan that if you follow this, you will be successful.
Yes.
Because that not everyone always can fit into those things.
Yes.
But if I am sharing, this is a feeling I had, and kind of normalizing that I didn't follow a 10-point plan to get to where I was.
Correct.
In fact, I struggled through a lot of stuff.
Correct.
And so the way that I, moved through that was to be willing to go to therapy. It was to be willing to, read that book or talk to a friend, or being open about my struggles. And I think it's important to note that not everyone has the luxury of going to therapy.
Correct.
Right? I mean, to me, that's life-saving healthcare that everyone should have access to.
Correct.
And so for people, thankfully there's some options, there's online options that are a lot more accessible now. But even sometimes just being willing to be vulnerable with a friend or someone that you're close to is maybe that first step. Correct. And then maybe someone could share with you, when I went through this, or when my cousin went through it. I met with someone today who, and this is such a random, they're like a vendor at work. Okay. And she shared a story about a friend of hers whose 12-year-old daughter is going through some mental health issues. And we were in a group, but I walked her out. And I said, I want you to know that, when I was a teenager, I tried to kill myself.
I see. And how powerful.
She almost burst into tears.
They're like, what? Someone like you? A leader of this company?
Well, and I told her, tell your friend, if she wants to talk to me or talk to my mom, right? It's the more we can normalize that what that person is going through right now is not shameful.
Yeah.
It's not unusual.
Absolutely.
And that they don't have to hold this facade, like, you know, that they have it all together while they're trying to deal with, you know, the hardest, scariest thing they've ever dealt with.
Correct.
And so I think the more open you can be, and of course, like, there's appropriate ways. I didn't blurt it out in the middle of the meeting. Yeah. Not because I'm embarrassed, but like, I don't want to, like, you know. But you share and you connect with people and you realize that those kind of parts of the story, that's the magic. Not that I'm some remarkable human that just did every right thing and now I've found myself in this place that's so successful. Yes. Because that sets up unrealistic expectations.
Correct. I love what you said. Oh my God. It just, you know, like, these are steps you need to take. These are the pain that you have to go through. These are up and downs that you have to go through. But the result is important. The result is important because now you have all these experiences. You experience life. You experience so many different people. You experience finding yourself.
Absolutely.
How important that was for you to find yourself, your authentic you. Like, be able to be aligned with who you are and be happy about who you are.
Well, I think it's an ongoing practice. I know it's an ongoing practice that I am committed to. Yes. To my time on this planet, right? Yes. But the thing that I think is so important is that I finally learned that the result is important, the destination, where you get, but really the journey is kind of the point.
Journey is the point.
And so I like to say a lot that multiple truths can be true at once. Correct. Right? So there's certain parts of my life where things could be going awesome, and then there could be a part over here where it's not so awesome. Correct. And instead of feeling like those two things aren't aligned, right, I try to remember that, like, I'm constantly in this process of practicing and learning and exploring what it looks like to be authentic. Correct. And so for me, I really had to learn how to become confident in myself, not because of external validation. Mm-hmm. And that's almost extra hard to do now because of how much social media there is, and we're constantly just like posting, you know, the most filtered, lovely, you know, parts of our lives. Absolutely. And no one really talks about, and even if people talk about hard stuff online, it's often, right, done so in kind of a manufactured way. Correct. Which is appropriate and totally fine. But sometimes remembering that I love to participate in all of that. I consider, right, I have these connections with folks that I've met on social media that, like, I consider dear friends. So I'm not like a big hater in all of that. But I do have to be mindful about, you know, what are my motives? How am I receiving my feel-goodness? Am I keeping my practices that keep me connected to my inner voice so I'm not distracted by all the other noise all the time? Okay. And for me, that journey is the part where I practice those things. I see. And that I need to stay tethered to, in the ups and the downs, like the reason that I'm showing up for this stuff. So it's great when everyone tells you you're amazing and it's a, you know, so, you know, awesome and everyone's all inspired. But if that's happening in my, you know, work life, but in my personal life, it feels like everything's kind of going to hell. You know, if I'm trying to maintain those two different things, that almost feels not authentic, right? Like, correct. I'm one person over here, but a totally different person over here. Yes. And so I really try to remember, like, how do I remind myself that, like, some days it's going to feel like everything's clicking. And then on the days that it feels like things aren't clicking, then to me, that's a data point that says there's either some self-care that needs here, there's some tending over here that needs to happen. Yeah. Like, what is my life or my body trying to tell me?
Very important. So I want to go ask you, since you just what you said, how important is that self-talk? Or, like, when you're down, how do you bring yourself back up? What do you tell yourself?
I mean, it's wildly important.
It's wildly important. It's just...
used to have a very, very negative relationship with myself from a self-talk standpoint. In fact, you talk about a tool. a really wonderful teacher, Christine Hassler, look her up, she's awesome, at a workshop one time had us put a photo of like our 5-year-old self as the screen capture on our phones.
Okay.
And then she said, I want you to imagine saying whatever negative thing you're saying to yourself right now in your head to this 5-year-old.
Okay.
So, like, you're fat, you're ugly, you're not good enough, you're stupid, I can't believe that, you did it again, I can't believe you're dealing with this. Imagine speaking that way to a 5-year-old.
Can you?
No.
You
I mean,
can.
I would literally never, under any circumstances.
Yeah.
I would want to hug that 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Right? And it was
This is amazing practice. Okay.
This beautiful reminder that when I look at that little girl, right, full of possibility and love and excitement and light in the world,
you're never able to say anything
you can't.
negative.
And so then why would I say that to who I am today? Right? Why would I?
Wow, that was such an amazing technique.
Just a beautiful kind of way to externalize it.
Yeah.
And then the other tool that I've always used is keeping kind of a, what are the 10 things that I say to myself constantly that are negative,
Okay.
and then rewrite them in a positive way. And then for me, and sometimes it feels cheesy, but just the act of disrupting the thought process is that, like, as soon as that pops in my head, like, I stop and I re-say it this way.
Okay.
And sometimes I have to put it on a Post-it note on, like, my bathroom mirror.
Okay, tell me this. Tell me, like, something horrible happened. And you're self-doubt comes. Like, oh my God, like, why did it happen? Da, 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 da. What's the first word that you tell yourself? Like you just sit there and you're just analyzing. What's the first thing that you tell yourself?
So the first thing that I try to do is I acknowledge. I call it a triggered state. If I'm triggered, if I'm upset, if there's energy and I feel like the intensity, right? Like I just acknowledge my dysregulated state.
Okay.
Right?
Very nice.
This is happening. I'm triggered in this moment. And then I physically take a couple of breaths. Mm-hmm. There's tons of research that talks about breath.
Yes.
And how it can regulate our nervous systems.
Okay.
And so, I will pause. And I even think of, for a long time, these practices never happened in real time. I would have to realize after the fact, I was really triggered in that situation.
Oh, I see.
Right, because it's autopilot.
You're just right there, you pause yourself.
Yes. Today, because this is a practice I've had for a long
Correct.
time.
Okay.
And then another teacher that I still work with, his name is Nicky Numeroff. He's really incredible. He talks about when you're triggered or when something comes up, that it's that there's that your gift is needed in the situation. So I try to pause and I think, either what's the gift in the situation? What am I being asked to learn here? How can I look at this outside of myself?
Okay.
And that disrupts
the
immediate, right? And then if I get a little space, the other big tool that I use is I ask myself, is anyone going to die in the next, hour or 10 minutes? Do I have to sit with this right here, right now and respond to this email? Do I have to respond to the person?
Okay.
Is it imperative
that
I respond in this emotional state? Mm-hmm. The answer is 99.9% of the time, no. So I practice sometimes saying, I've received your email and I'd like, I'm going to, I'll get back to you by tomorrow. Or, I'm going to take a minute to process, or, or even I think of when my husband and I talk, or, when I'm the best version of myself, sometimes I can just say I'm experiencing kind of a lot of feelings right now and I'd like a minute to process.
Got it.
So that I can dialogue from a grounded place.
Got it.
But I think it's important to note that I didn't just have those words all the time.
Yeah.
Right. I had to even just practice acknowledging what being triggered means.
You went after it. You tried to do something about it. You didn't say, oh my God, I have this and I cannot do anything about it. So I'm just going to like this is me.
Yeah.
Like you said, no, I have this. Let me see how can I make it better.
Yeah, and where are there
Right?
teachers around me that can help me learn?
So you seeked learning.
Yes.
You seeked helping yourself.
Yes.
You seek, let me go find answer. I don't have all the answers. Right?
Yes, and I think
This is why you know this many techniques. How to reset.
Yes. I think, I dabble a little in the astrology world, but I'm like a Sagittarius sun and a Cancer rising, which is a perfect kind of marriage between the desire to like seek knowledge and know things and speak your truth, and then just like feelings upon feelings upon feelings, right? And so for me, that really manifests itself in, obsessively listening to podcasts or reading books or learning tools, or, I am like the queen of like the next tip and trick to help me stay connected to. I feel like I'm a very purpose-driven individual.
Correct.
And that's my measure of success. And so all the other achievements and all those things, they're great and I love them. So I don't want to make it sound like I don't love breaking my sales numbers, because I do.
Yes.
But I love even more so leading a team of people that are aligned and that are practicing, really like generative work culture and being kind and respectful to each other and being good teammates and all of that in order to achieve that success.
Got it.
Not where we're abandoning ourselves in order to get the goal.
Okay. Very nice. How do you handle failure?
I'd like to say, as often as possible, I try to look at failure as a data point in the same way that I handle success.
Very nice.
It's like part of the journey.
Okay.
Life isn't just up, 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 up. Right? And so if we look at anything where like failure is over here and success is over here, right, we miss kind of all this beautiful nuance that exists in the middle.
Okay.
And so I really look at it as kind of breakdowns and breakthroughs rather than success and failure.
Very nice.
And
analogy.
So in order to have a breakthrough, a breakdown has to happen.
Wow.
We can't just keep breaking through. Right?
Wow.
So I look at failure as a teacher.
So when you fail, so what would you do?
Well, I mean, I told you the story with my employee the other day.
Yeah.
I literally, right? And that's such a small example.
Yeah.
Of a moment where I made a giant mistake, and instead of trying to I just was real honest and was like, wow, I could have handled that way better.
Okay.
But the other thing I didn't try to do is I didn't try to make it better. I acknowledged, right, that I made the mistake.
Okay.
But then I said, like, the only thing that is going to rebuild the trust is my actions moving forward.
Okay.
So what I will commit to you is that I will be more mindful and make a better choice next time.
Wow.
And then he, right, or whatever person is with you, right, can trust you based on watching your actions. So when I think of, what do I do when I fail? Failure feels like such a, it's very rare that there's like one catastrophic instance in which it all falls apart. It's usually kind of a series of events.
Okay.
And so when things aren't going the way that I want them to, sometimes I have to ground kind of back into, like, am I pushing something that isn't going to work because my ego's attached to it, because I'm afraid of failing, because I'm afraid of a different outcome?
Okay.
Or am I still aligned on my pathway and this is a breakdown that I need to bring, my gifts and talents to, bring other people's gifts and talents to, and then we work through to create a breakthrough.
Got it.
Right? I think that things are so nuanced, and when we look at them as if it's this like enormous success versus this enormous failure.
Okay.
So
it's just a tool. Even the failure is just a tool for you. It's a tool how to make it better.
It is. And I think sometimes it's important that we consider kind of holding our goals, I like to say, with soft hands. Because if I go back to the struggles I had as a teen where I wanted to control everything as a sense of like, nothing will go wrong if I control all the things. Uh-huh. And a lot of times that was like my coping mechanism, right? That I would triple plan for everything. I had a backup plan to my backup plan to another backup plan.
Okay.
But then what I learned is that I was holding so tightly to my outcome that there was no room for something bigger and better to happen because I over-controlled everything. So I call it I don't leave room for the divine, that extra little magic thing that I'm how did that come out of nowhere? I didn't even know. Yeah. So I really try to set intentions instead of expectations.
Wow. That's a good one.
That's another thing that my teacher had said is expectations are premeditated resentments. So if I have an expectation of you and you don't deliver, right, then I am pissed.
Oh,
but if I said
was good.
But if I set an intention of how I want to show up and how I want to invite you to show up, then we can co-create something together.
Okay. Wow.
Which is a lot more connected.
I'm literally going to write this down and just look at it on a daily basis and going to help myself with that decision making. I'm like, wow.
It lets space for us to all be human.
Yeah.
And not just be a
space for new possibilities that we have no idea. How can we even know answers to everything?
Of course. If I come into a meeting with you and I am this is how it's going to end, right?
Yeah.
And then you come in with your idea of this is how this is going to end. And neither of us are going to budge from that.
Yeah.
It makes one of us is succeeding and one of us is failing.
Yeah.
In that scenario.
And there is no open possibilities there.
But if we show up, right, with this intention of what else is possible, then all of a sudden our experiences, our energy, our ideas, all of these things, maybe we create something that neither of us had even thought of.
Oh my God.
And that's how I try to lead teams.
Whew, you just gave me goosebumps, so big, because later on I'm going to share something with you. I recently had this psychedelic kind of guided lesson, and there was two message that I received, and it was surrender and trust. When you surrender, because what you said, it just put me back on that message that I was receiving, and it was just, we do not know the outcome. We come in to our meeting, we come in our interactions, but we cannot control the outcome.
Of course.
All
we can control is our own behavior and our focus.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we lose sight. It's we're women, we're running things, you're a girl boss, you're this, you're that, you have to be on it, and we're put together, and it's all these things.
Correct.
And we lose touch with kind of what got us here, which for me was not this perfect, beautifully paved road that I am exactly where I thought I would be.
Yeah.
Instead, it was this, kind of symphony of positives, negatives, neutrals, struggles, support, all of this stuff that brings me to where I am. And so why would I think that the rest of the future that I have to live into is suddenly going to be this planned out map where I'm going to know all the things at the right time and show up and look good while I do it and say the right things every single time?
Wow. Yeah.
That's not what got me here.
No.